Netflix got me again. They got me to watch another show. The Electric State is a bloated, convoluted mess that is ironically filled with so much exposition. How did two directors manage to make a movie this fucking bad? Aren't two heads supposed to be better than one? But this time, instead of berating the movie and just feeding the algorithm with hate videos, I'm actually going to try and fix it.
Excuse me.
So, before I shove my unsolicited thoughts down your throats, please remember this is all in good fun and spoilers ahead. Not like it would matter, but I really need the views and the subs so I can monetize this channel. Anywho, let's get on, shall we? Let's start with the plot and the rest will follow. I'm not going to make significant changes to this because it wouldn't be the same movie. I gotta work with the parameters of this world presented to us. So let's stick with this post-apocalyptic world where humans went to war with the machines. Why did the creators think that starting with these two uncharismatic idiots would be a good thing? The movie tries to shoehorn this bullshit relationship between Michelle and Christopher, which honestly isn't needed. Instead, I would start the movie with a scene which is obviously before the war starts, where we see Christopher being able to transfer his consciousness into a robot.
With a box of scrap!
This sequence, in my opinion, is a better way to show how intelligent Christopher really is at such a young age, instead of the crap we're fed in the movie.
That professor said that test took Einstein 3 days.
Shut up!
Then I will have this sequence, which is a good way of telling the audience what the movie is going to be about. It reveals nothing about the main characters, but also tells you what world you're in. I will edit out the whole peace treaty between the humans and the machines and the whole exposition dump about who Ethan Skate is and how he created the Neurocaster to fight the machines. We will use that later. We do not need to know this right in the first 5 minutes of the film. I realize at this point that this film was made for children since it was adapted from a children's book, but you're telling me that you spent upwards of $250 million on a children's movie?
Get the fuck out of here!
Even if this was a children's movie, how dumb are these kids? Give me a break. You can do better than that. Alright, so we show the whole destruction and the whole war, and then we cut to this scene. Whilst we're here, I need to make a slight change. I understand that Millie Bobby Brown is a household name amongst Gen Z.
The dirtier the better.
This is in no way berating her abilities about her acting and her fame. I'm sure she's earned it. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. The girl can act, I'm sorry, but I just couldn't believe her in this role. I will replace her with someone charismatic who would be able to go toe-to-toe with a giant like Chris Pratt. Walker Scobell?
I choose you!
I'm gonna smoke your banana, mother.
No, that's not what we talked about.
I think he would be wonderful in this role. He's funny, sarcastic, and would be able to share the screen with Chris Pratt as his equal. Alright, so every time I mention Michelle, imagine Michael, played by Walker. Okay, so let's get back into the scene. We see Michael trying to take off his ankle monitor as the door opens, and we see a robot screaming at him. And we see Michael just look back in shock. This can also give the impression that the war is still ongoing, because at the start we saw a bunch of war footage, and it would seem that the robot has caught up to Michael, but the robot is actually controlled by George Costanza.
Don't put your tongue on the floor! He's putting his tongue on the floor!
It is also revealed here that Costanza isn't Michael's father and that he's a foster child. This is creating intrigue about Michael. We can all surmise at this point that they died in the war, which would be accurate. It would also be evident that Michael does not like living with Costanza because he's a loser and only has him because he receives money from the state to take care of him. That night, as Michael is fast asleep, a robot appears in his room. This time, it isn't George, but an actual psycho-crazed robot wanting to kill Michael, but is saved by a Cosmo robot just in time. Michael is confused. What just happened here? The Cosmo robot just happens to be his brother Christopher, but he obviously cannot speak, except of course in these pre-recorded lines.
I don't bargain, motherfucker.
But he gets the message across. Why did the psycho robot want to kill Michael? Stick around to find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball. So this is a call to action which sets off the adventure. Michael needs to find his brother. He tries to leave, but Costanza isn't going to let his cash cow run away. Blah blah blah, funny sequence here, Michael escapes. Michael then starts asking the robot some questions to understand exactly what is happening and where he needs to go. The robot simply points to a map. New Mexico, and that's where they go. I will cut out Dr. Amherst's part because frankly he does not add anything to the story. Sorry Mr. Kwan, but the club is full. I'm going to ask you to leave now. On the way to New Mexico, they meet Keats, and I'll keep this sequence exactly the same. Chris Pratt really knows how to bring the riz, man. He lights up every scene he is in. So very natural in his element and has the humor down. Seeing him next to Millie was an insult, and the executive at Netflix who thought this was a good idea needs to be fired. And also, shame on you, Russo brothers.
You need to do better.
So, Michael and his robot hop onto Keats' truck to hide and hitch a ride, and off they go. I will also shrink Marshall Bradbury's role down significantly. Again, he offers offers nothing to the story. They try to make him this morally ambiguous character, but I really couldn't care less because they did not hash him out properly. After Keith retreats into his compound, he realizes that Michael and a robot have snuck into the property.
Snuck isn't a word.
Anyway, Keith realizes that Michael is only a kid and tells him to leave. Now, instead of Marshall Bradbury interrupting them and destroying Keith's home or bunker, which basically forces Keith to team up with Michelle, let's give him a purpose. Why would Keith want to join forces with Michael and help him find his brother? Keith is a smuggler, and he knows that New Mexico has way more loot than he can get his hands on, but it is guarded by robots since it is in the middle of the exclusion zone. Michael simply lies to Keith, telling him that he's actually going into the exclusion zone to get the loot and that his robot sidekick has created a safe passage for him to get this loot, which kind of forces Keith to team up with Michael with the ulterior motive of screwing Michael once he gets his hands on it. This will provide Keith with his call to action, now believing Michael's lie. Now both of them set out towards the exclusion zone. Whilst that's happening, now I will introduce the exposition dump on Ethan Skate and how he helped end the war with his revolutionary tech and how the world is hooked on to this new piece of technology. Here, we will also insert the conversation between Ethan and his mother and also the following conversation with the scientists where they explain how Christopher's consciousness has slipped away.
My company collapses on Saturday.
Friday, more likely.
We come back to Michael and Keith coming across a mall where they get attacked by robots and get captured by Mr. Peanut. This sequence will play out as is as he explains how they ended up there and how Mr. Peanut fought for the robot's freedom. I would edit out the search for Dr. Amherst since he does not exist in my plot. What I would also change here is, since no human can step into the robot's territory and vice versa, there is an army of robots controlled by the humans that invade the exclusion zone. Mr. Peanut and the audience would believe that the human-controlled robots are there to rescue Michael and Keith. There is a huge fight. This is where we are introduced to Marshall Bradbury, and it turns out that it is his army that have invaded the exclusion zone. We also find out that Marshall Bradbury actually works for Ethan Skate. Michael, the Cosmo robot, Keith and his robot get captured and are taken into Ethan's facility. This is where Michael meets Christopher, who is unconscious in a pod. Ethan explains how Christopher really pioneered the technology that helped the humans win the war. It also turns out that Ethan and Christopher had a disagreement over the use of the technology, and Ethan had Christopher poisoned and paralyzed, and that is why he ended up in the pod. Ethan wasn't the genius of the two, but had the money to fund the technology, and knew he needed Christopher in order to make the technology better, and hence why the quality of the products was going down. There was only so much he could do. Ethan tried to find out whether Christopher had any other relatives. He tracked down Michael and started to stalk him in order to replace Christopher, thinking that intelligence would run in the family. But turned out that Michael was a fuck-up and Christopher was the only gifted child. Ethan also realized that if Michael would suspect Christopher was alive, he would come looking for him. The robot that was sent to Michael's house to kill him was sent by Ethan, but Christopher transferred his consciousness into a robot and saved Michael just in time. This is also where Keith realizes that it was never about the loot and is upset, which could be turned into a funny moment.
You son of a bitch.
Which leads us to the final battle. Mr. Peanut wanting revenge over the destruction Ethan caused in the exclusion zone. It's all fair game now. The final sequence is the battle between the robots and the human-controlled robots, where Mr. Peanut wins and Michael is able to save his brother, although he will never walk again. To Keith's surprise, Mr. Peanut does help him find the loot and he ends up getting what he wants as well. Movie over. I believe this is a much better plot for the film with all the fluff cut out. This is a simple action-adventure film led by two charismatic actors without the additional crap. Why was the budget for this movie so damn high? $250 million on a kids movie is just wild, man. How do the executives at Netflix justify this garbage? I'm truly dumbfounded at the thought of this. I'm not even kidding. Who is asking for these movies? You had so many characters that really do not affect the plot in any way other than confuse the audience and also make things too convenient and also hold the audience's hand to the next destination of the movie.
What the fuck is this?
And it's directed by the same people that made these movies. Like, how is that even possible? I'm really at a loss for words here. And with that said, time to get on my knees. Thank you for watching. I'm trying to get this channel monetized. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. I'm on my way to 8,000 subs. Please share this video with others who would be interested in similar topics, as this is the best way to increase visibility. I also have a library of previous uploads as well. I'm sure you love the hell out of this one. I hope to see you on board. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.